The offer that shook the room. The night sky over the city shimmered with golden lights, the towers glowing like spears of glass reaching toward the heavens. In the center of downtown, the Astoria Grand Hotel was alive with music, laughter, and wealth. A charity gala was underway, where business tycoons, celebrities, and politicians mingled under glittering chandeliers. It was a night meant for power plays disguised as generosity, where fortunes changed hands over champagne glasses and alliances were sealed with quiet whispers in shadowed corners. Inside that ballroom, Elena Ruiz moved like a shadow among them. The emerald green uniform dress clung to her slender frame, her hair pulled neatly back into a bun. A tray of champagne flutes rested in her trembling hands, and she forced herself to smile as she drifted from table to table. To the guests, she was invisible, just another server, one of many, but inside her chest, Elena's heart thundered with anxiety. She wasn't supposed to be here tonight. She had begged her manager for extra shifts, desperate to catch up on rent and pay for her grandmother's medicine. Nursing school tuition was overdue, the landlord had been threatening eviction, and her younger brother Lucas needed school supplies. Every coin mattered. So when she was told she could pick up a shift at the Cole Foundation Charity Gala, she had no choice but to say yes. The ballroom was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers dripped like frozen rain from the high ceiling, catching the light of 100 golden candles. Velvet curtains framed the tall arched windows, through which the city lights blinked like stars. Rich perfume mingled with the sharp scent of champagne, and laughter rose above the soft strains of a jazz quartet. It was a world Elena had only glimpsed in glossy magazines, the world of the wealthy, untouchable, powerful, and at the very heart of it sat Damian Cole. Everyone in the room seemed to orbit around him, though he sat quietly at a table near the center. He was younger than most of the billionaires there, not yet 40, but his presence was undeniable. Broad-shouldered, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit, Damian had an aura of command. His eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned the crowd with the same intensity as a hawk circling the skies. People whispered about him. He was a man who had built an empire in less than a decade, a visionary who saw opportunities where others saw risks. Some said he was ruthless, others said he was eccentric, but all agreed Damian Cole was a man who believed everything had a price. Elena tried not to stare at him. She focused on her tray, moving carefully through the clusters of guests, but fate had a cruel sense of humor. As she passed a group of laughing men near the bar, one of them, a politician well-fed on money and arrogance, reached out and tugged her wrist. "Hey, sweetheart," he slurred, his breath heavy with alcohol. "You're too pretty to be carrying drinks. Sit with us for a while." The other men chuckled. Elena's grip tightened on the tray, but she kept her voice calm. "I'm working, sir," she said softly. He reached again, trying to pull her closer. But before Elena could protest, a deep voice cut through the chatter. "Let her go." The sound was like steel, low, commanding, impossible to ignore. The laughter died instantly. Elena turned her head and her breath caught. It was Damian Cole. He had spoken without raising his voice, but the weight of his authority silenced the entire corner of the room. The politician quickly released her wrist, muttering an excuse as he backed away. Elena steadied her tray, cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "Thank you," she whispered, though she hadn't expected him to hear. But he had. Damian's eyes, dark and unreadable, locked on hers. For a moment it felt like the crowd disappeared. The chandeliers, the music, the gossip, all of it faded until there was only his gaze, intense, studying, almost amused. Elena looked away quickly, her pulse racing, and tried to continue her route. But before she could take more than 3 steps, Damian's voice rang out again, this time loud enough for half the ballroom to hear. $50 million! The words cut through the air like a blade. Conversations halted, champagne glasses, froze midair, and the jazz musicians faltered on their instruments. Every head turned toward him. Damien leaned back in his chair, his gaze fixed firmly on Elena. His voice was calm, almost casual, but it carried the weight of a challenge. 50 million, he repeated. For one night. With you. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A woman in diamonds clapped a hand over her mouth. Someone's phone camera clicked. The politician who had grabbed Elena choked on his drink. Elena froze. Her knees felt weak. Her tray wobbled dangerously, and she barely managed to set it down on the nearest table before the glasses crashed to the floor. Her face burned. She had no words, no breath. "Excuse me?" she whispered, though her voice was barely audible. Damien tilted his head, his expression unreadable. "You heard me!" The room erupted into murmurs. Some laughed in disbelief, others whispered in envy. Journalists scribbled in their notebooks, already tasting the scandal. A billionaire offering $50 million for one night with a waitress. It was madness, outrageous, and irresistible gossip. Elena's heart hammered in her chest. She felt every eye on her, every whisper curling around her like smoke. She wanted to run, to disappear. But something inside her, something her grandmother had taught her long ago, rose instead. Dignity. She straightened her back, lifted her chin, and met Damien's gaze without flinching. Her voice, though quiet, carried a strength that surprised even her. "You must think money can buy anything," she said. "But it can't buy me." The silence was deafening. Then, without another word, Elena turned on her heel and walked. Away, her heels clicking sharply against the polished marble floor. Behind her, the ballroom buzzed with shock. Damien Cole leaned back in his chair, and for the first time in years, a faint smile tugged at the corner of his lips. Hours later. The gala ended, but Elena's world did not return to normal. At her grandmother's small, crumbling apartment, the glow from the street lamp spilled across the front door, illuminating the eviction notice taped firmly to the wood. Elena's chest tightened as she ripped it down and read the bold letters, "Final warning, rent overdue, payment required within 10 days. Inside, the house smelled faintly of chamomile tea and old books. Her grandmother, frail and coughing softly, sat in the worn armchair with a blanket over her knees. Lucas, only 16, sat on the floor playing video games, oblivious to the weight pressing down on his sister's shoulders. "Another notice?" her grandmother asked gently, her tired eyes meeting Elena's. Elena nodded, trying to smile. "Don't worry, Abuela, I'll figure it out." But in her heart, she didn't know how. Her paycheck barely covered groceries. The hospital internship that was supposed to secure her future was slipping away. And tuition payments were piling, higher than she could climb. Later that night, as Elena sat on her bed staring at her phone, the image of Damien Cole returned to her mind. His calm eyes, his audacious words, $50 million. It had felt like an insult at the gala. But now, staring at the eviction notice in her hands, it felt like temptation. Could one night, just one, save her family? Save her grandmother's medicine? Save her brother's future? Her stomach twisted with shame for even considering it. But when her phone buzzed, she saw a new message from an unknown number. "Miss Ruiz, Mr. Cole would like to clarify his offer. If you wish to discuss, reply yes." Her thumb hovered over the screen. Her heart raced. She thought of her grandmother coughing in the next room, of Lucas's careless smile, of the tuition bill waiting in her email, and then she whispered to herself, "What choice do I have?" Her thumb pressed yes. The price of dignity. The morning after the gala, the city buzzed with the story of Elena Ruiz. Every gossip blog, every news feed, every social media page repeated the same outrageous headline: "Billionaire Damien Cole offers $50 million for one night." With a waitress! For Elena, the words weren't just headlines, they were shackles. Strangers whispered when she passed. Co-workers stared in silence, and even customers at the hospital where she worked as a nursing assistant pointed her out like she was some exotic bird in a cage. But Elena tried to block it out. She had made her choice last night when she texted yes. She hadn't agreed because she wanted fame or attention or wealth. She agreed because desperation had a way of silencing pride. Her grandmother's medicine, their rent, her tuition, it all stacked, higher than her dignity could hold. Still, shame burned inside her. She told herself it was one night, and after that, she would disappear from Damian Cole's world forever. The call by mid-afternoon, her phone buzzed again. The screen flashed with a private number. With trembling hands, she answered. "Miss Ruiz," a calm, professional voice spoke. "This is Victor Hale, Mr. Cole's assistant. He has instructed me to arrange your evening. A car will arrive at your residence at 7. Elena's throat tightened. "And what exactly does he expect?" Victor hesitated, then replied, "Only your company, Miss Ruiz. The details will be made clear by Mr. Cole himself." The line went dead before Elena could ask more. She sat on her bed staring at the peeling paint on the walls, her mind racing. Her grandmother's soft cough echoed from the living room. Lucas called out, asking what was for dinner, his voice. Carefree, untouched by the storm brewing in her chest. One night, she reminded herself. One night and everything changes. The ride at exactly 7, the hum of a sleek engine rolled up outside the apartment. Elena stepped out in a simple black dress she had borrowed from Mariah, her best friend. It wasn't glamorous, but it fit, and that was all she could manage. Waiting at the curb was a glossy black limousine. A uniformed driver stepped out, holding. The door opened for her without a word. Inside, the leather seats gleamed, and the faint scent of sandalwood wrapped around her. A small box sat on the seat beside her, tied with a silver ribbon. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a pair of crystal-heeled shoes, delicate and sparkling, unlike anything she had ever owned. A note rested on top, written in neat handwriting. "Wear these. D.C." Elena bit her lip, torn between irritation and awe. Was this control or kindness? She couldn't tell. Slipping them on, she realized they fit perfectly, as though he had known her size all along. The car glided through the city, past neon-lit streets and towering skyscrapers, until it pulled into a private entrance at the tallest building downtown, Cole Tower. Her breath caught as she stepped into the lobby. Black marble floors stretched endlessly, golden pillars rose like ancient monuments, and a massive mural covered one wall, a vibrant painting of hands reaching toward the sky, each hand darker, scarred, weathered, yet all reaching upward. It didn't feel like arrogance. It felt like ambition. The receptionist greeted her by name before directing her to a private elevator. Elena stepped inside, the doors sliding shut, her reflection staring back at her in polished steel. The penthouse. When the doors opened, she stepped into another world. The penthouse stretched wide and open, floor-to-ceiling glass revealing the city skyline glittering below like a field of stars. Modern art lined the walls. Abstract paintings of crimson and gold, sculptures of steel and stone that looked alive in the soft light. And at the far end of the room stood Damian Cole. No tuxedo tonight. He wore a black silk shirt, unbuttoned. At the collar, sleeves rolled back to reveal strong forearms. His dark hair was tied loosely, and his posture was casual. Yet Elena could feel the weight of him from across the room. "You came," he said simply, his deep voice steady. "You paid," Elena replied. Surprising herself with the firmness in her tone, a slow smile touched his lips. "Good. I prefer honesty." He motioned toward the dining table. Elena's eyes widened. Instead of catered meals on silver trays, the long marble table held a steaming pot of seafood gumbo, bowls of rice, and a plate of cornbread. "You cooked?" she asked, incredulous. "My mother taught me," he said, ladling her a portion. "I was raised on this food, Creole roots. It keeps me grounded." The smell was warm and rich, filling the room with comfort. Elena sat cautiously, still unsure what game he was playing. The dinner. They ate in near silence at first, the clink of silverware and the hum of the city below the only sounds. But slowly, the quiet broke. Damien asked about her family, about her studies. She spoke carefully, but he listened, really listened, his eyes focused on her words, not her appearance. "And you?" she asked finally. "Why me? Why 50 million? He leaned back in his chair, studying her like a puzzle. "Because you're the only person in that room who didn't look at me with fear or greed. You didn't want anything from me. That is rare." Elena frowned. "So you thought you could buy me?" He chuckled, low and humorless. "No, Miss Ruiz. I wanted to see if there's anything left in this world I can't buy. And it seems I found it." The words sent a strange shiver through her. Was this all a test? A game? Or was there more beneath his cold exterior? For the rest of the night, he never touched her. He never made a move. Instead, he asked about her dreams, about why she chose nursing, about the grandmother who raised her. And when Elena spoke of her mother, who had died when she was 14, his expression softened, just for a moment, like he understood grief too well. Hours slipped by unnoticed. By the time she stood to leave, her chest felt lighter, though. Confusion still clouded her mind. At the elevator, Damien pressed a small card into her hand. "Check your account," he said, her brows knitted. "All ready?" He nodded. "Payment first, always." As the elevator doors closed, Elena looked down at the card. Nothing but a phone number. The shock-in, the back of the limousine, her phone. Buzzed. She unlocked it, and her breath caught. Deposit, 50,000. Her heart raced. She stared at the glowing numbers until her eyes blurred. It was real. $50 million, enough to pay rent, tuition, medical bills, everything. Enough to erase every burden she had carried since childhood. And yet, as the city lights rolled past her window, Elena felt a hollow ache inside. Damien Cole had given her the world without asking for anything in return. So why did it feel like something had only just begun? Back home, when she stepped into the apartment, Lucas nearly dropped his game controller. "Elena, is it true? Did you really—" "Lucas!" she hissed, silencing him with a sharp look. Their grandmother stirred in her chair, coughing softly. Elena helped her sip water before retreating to her bedroom, locking the door. Her phone buzzed again. This time, Mariah. "Girl, tell me this isn't real." Mariah's voice was half panicked, half awed. "You've got 50 million in your account. I checked the gossip pages. Damien Cole? Elena, this is insane. What did he do? What did you do?" Elena pressed her forehead to the wall, whispering, "Nothing. He didn't touch me." Silence hung on the line before Mariah whispered, "Then why, Elena? Why would a man like him pay that much just to talk?" Elena had no answer. Only the memory of his eyes as he said, "You're the only one who didn't want anything from me." The invitation. 2 days later, while Elena was at the hospital, her phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. "Your presence is requested at Cole Tower." 7 p.m. Her stomach dropped. She hadn't expected to hear from him again. One night, that was the deal. And yet, here it was, another invitation. She stared at the screen, torn between fear and curiosity. Damien Cole had given her $50 million for a single night of conversation. What more could he want? Her heart whispered that she should ignore it, run from this world of power and danger. But something else, a pull she couldn't explain, drew her back toward the man who had seen her, really seen her, in a way no one else ever had. And as the sun dipped low over the city, Elena knew one truth. The price of dignity wasn't counted in money. It was counted in the choices she made. With trembling fingers, she typed her reply. "I'll come." Elena's life has already shifted, her debts erased, her dignity tested, her name whispered in every corner of the city. Damian Cole isn't finished with her. But she must decide whether stepping further into his world will destroy her or transform her. The world watches, the morning sun slid through thin curtains, casting pale stripes of light across Elena's room. She hadn't slept much. Even with $50 million sitting in her account, her chest felt heavy, her thoughts racing. She had convinced herself that money would bring peace, but peace was still nowhere to be found. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. At first, she ignored it, pressing the pillow tighter against her ear, but the buzzing wouldn't stop. Finally, with a sigh, she reached for it. What she saw made her stomach twist, her face everywhere. Gossip blogs had plastered her photo, the same shot from the gala when Damien had called out his offer. One headline screamed in bold letters, "Mystery." "Girl worth $50 million? Who is Elena Ruiz?" Another mocked her. "From waitress to billionaire's prize. Is she the real winner or just another scandal?" Scrolling further, she found crueler comments. Strangers dissected her hair, her clothes, her background. They dug up old social media photos, even blurry snapshots of her in her hospital scrubs. One article even mentioned the eviction notice pinned to her grandmother's door. Her heart sank. That was supposed to be private. She felt naked before the world. At the hospital, when Elena arrived for her shift, whispers followed her down the hallway. Nurses, who had once been friendly, now gave her tight smiles. Patients stared. Even the head, Nurse, Mrs. Walker, pulled her aside into the cramped office lined with filing cabinets. "Elena," Mrs. Walker said gently but firmly, "I need to speak with you." Elena tried to steady her breathing. "If this is about the headlines, I can explain," the older woman shook her head. "It's not about what you did or didn't do. It's about perception. The administration believes the attention you're attracting could compromise patient privacy. They've asked that you step away from the program, at least for now." Elena's knees weakened. "Step away? You mean I'm being suspended?" Mrs. Walker sighed, her expression sympathetic. "It's temporary, but yes." Elena's eyes stung. She had fought for this internship, had poured herself into every shift, every class, every late night of studying. And now, because of a man's reckless offer, it was slipping through her hands. She left the office with her chest tight, her throat aching, but she held her head high. Dignity, she reminded herself. Always dignity. The invitation that evening, another message arrived on her phone. "Cole Tower, 7 p.m. Mr. Cole requests your presence." Elena stared at it, torn. She wanted to refuse. After all, his world was swallowing hers whole. But deep inside, a restless curiosity gnawed at her. She needed answers. At 7 sharp, the same sleek car pulled up outside her apartment. Lucas pressed his face against the window, wide-eyed. "You're going again?" "To see him?" he asked. "Lucas, don't start," Elena said, pulling on her coat. "Do you know what $50 million could do for us?" His voice cracked with teenage desperation. "We could buy a real house, a car, we could—" "It's not your money," she snapped, her tone sharper than she intended. His face fell, and guilt stabbed her heart. "Lucas, I'm sorry, but some things are bigger than money." He looked away, muttering, "Maybe not for you." Those words followed her into the car, sitting heavier on her chest than any diamond necklace ever could. Coal Tower, again. The private elevator hummed softly as it carried her skyward. When the doors opened, she expected to see Damien waiting as before. But instead, the penthouse was empty, save for a woman standing by the glass wall. She was tall, elegant, her cream-colored suit hugging her figure like it had been sewn for her alone. Her hair gleamed under the light, and her heels clicked softly as she turned. "Ah," the woman said smoothly, her smile sharp as glass. "So you're the waitress?" Elena stiffened. "And you are?" The woman's smile widened. "Sophia Vance, Damien's former partner, in business, and in other ways." Elena felt the jab in her chest, though she refused to flinch. "Nice to meet you," she said coolly. Sophia's gaze flicked over Elena's borrowed coat, her simple dress, her trembling hands. "You think you're different," she said softly. "But men like Damien don't keep women like you. They use you, then toss you aside." Before Elena could respond, another voice entered the room. "That's enough, Sophia!" Damien strode in, his presence filling the space like thunder. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes lingered on Sophia with a coldness Elena hadn't seen before. "We're done here," he said flatly. Sophia smirked, brushing past Elena with a cloud of expensive perfume. As she reached the door, she paused, her gaze slicing into Elena one last time. "Enjoy your spotlight while it lasts." And then she was gone. The conversation. Damien poured Elena a glass of hibiscus tea and handed it to her. His hands were steady, hers were not. "I'm sorry about that," he said simply. "Who is she, really?" Elena asked. "A reminder of the kind of people I used to let close," he replied. His tone was calm, but there was something heavy beneath it. "People who see me as a prize, a ladder, or a weapon, never as a man." Elena studied him. For all his power, his wealth, his impossible confidence, there was a flicker of loneliness in his eyes. "Why me?" she asked quietly. "Why did you single me out?" He leaned forward, his gaze steady. "Because you said no. Everyone else in that room wanted something from me. But you walked away." Her breath caught. The words were simple, but the weight of them pressed against her chest. She had never been wanted for her refusal before. The gossip stormed. The next morning, Elena awoke to chaos. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Mariah's voice crackled through the line before she could even say hello. "Elena, you're on every gossip page. Pictures, articles, everything." "What do you mean?" Elena asked, dread curling in her stomach. "They got photos of you leaving Coal Tower last night. Clear ones. Headline says, 'Billionaire's mystery girl spends second night with Damien Cole.' They're calling you his mistress. Some say you're after his money. Some say you're blackmailing him. It's Elena, it's ugly." Her hands shook as she scrolled through the headlines. Words like gold digger, scandal, seduction screamed back at her. One headline went further. "Elena Ruiz, from scrubs to silk. The nurse who stole Damien Cole's heart, or just another bargain?" Her stomach twisted. By the time she arrived at the hospital, it was worse. Patients whispered, co-workers gawked, and Mrs. Walker met her at the door with a solemn face. "Elena, I'm sorry. The board has decided your internship is terminated, effective immediately." The words slammed into her like a blow. The breaking point. That night, Elena sat alone. In her room, her phone buzzing endlessly with calls she didn't want to answer. Lucas had stormed out earlier after another fight, and her grandmother had already gone to bed. Her life, everything she had worked for, was unraveling before her eyes. A knock came at the door. She opened it to find Damien standing there, rain dripping from the brim of his coat. "You're everywhere on the feeds," he said, his voice low. "I noticed," she replied bitterly. He studied her, his expression softer now. "Come with me," she hesitated. "Why?" "Because if you stay here, they'll eat you alive." His words were blunt, but his tone was gentle. Against every instinct screaming at her to run, Elena found herself following him downstairs. Black car waited. As the city lights blurred past the window, Elena whispered, "Why are you doing this?" "Why me?" Damien's gaze remained on the skyline. "Because you're the only thing in my life I can't explain. And for the first time, in years I don't want to." Between shadows and spotlight, the city did not sleep. Every glowing billboard, every flicker of a phone screen, every whisper in the streets carried the same story. Elena Ruiz, the woman who cost a billionaire $50 million. But inside, the walls of Cole Tower, where glass windows stretched toward the stars, the world felt strangely quiet. Elena stood at the window, her arms wrapped tightly around herself, staring down at the city. Each car below was a blur of light, rushing, somewhere, free of the prison she now felt trapped in. Behind her, Damien Cole moved like a storm contained, measured, calm, yet brimming with an energy that could shatter everything if released. "You should eat something," he said, setting a plate of food on the marble counter. Elena turned, her jaw tightening. "Do you always feed people after you ruin their lives?" Damien's brow lifted, but his voice remained steady. "You think I ruined your life?" She laughed bitterly. "I've lost my internship. The hospital doesn't want me. Everyone whispers when I walk past. My brother looks at me like I'm a walking lottery ticket, and strangers online are calling me a thief. So yes, your little offer has destroyed everything I worked for." Silence filled the room, heavy and sharp. Damien's gaze locked on hers, but there was no anger in his eyes, only something harder to define. "You're angry at me because you said yes," he said finally. Her stomach clenched. "Don't twist this. I said yes because I didn't have a choice." "There's always a choice." Elena wanted to scream, to throw the plate across the room, to make him feel the fire and shame burning inside her. But instead, her shoulders slumped. "Not when your family is drowning. Not when you're the only one keeping them above water." For the first time, Damien looked away. His jaw tightened, as if her words had struck somewhere deep. Online shadows days blurred together. Every morning, Elena woke to new headlines. Every evening, she scrolled through endless streams of online comments. Gold digger. Smart girl. Took the money and ran. Wait, he gave her $50 million and didn't even touch her? What's wrong with him? Some posts were cruel. Others were worse, pitying. People who didn't know her story wrote it for her, twisting facts into a caricature of who she was. One night, her phone buzzed with a message from Lucas. "Lucas, need 5K. Just for a while, friends say you're rich now." Her chest tightened. "She," replied Elena. "Lucas, the money isn't ours to waste. It's for school, for Abuela's medicine, for stability." But his reply cut like a blade. "Lucas, maybe Damien would give you more if you stopped playing innocent." The words stabbed deeper than any headline. He was her little brother, the boy she'd helped raise, and now even he was starting to see her through the world's lens. She set the phone down with shaking hands, tears blurring her vision. A moment of quiet. That night, Damien found her on the balcony, her knees pulled to her chest, her hair loose in the cold wind. She didn't hear him approach until he draped a blanket over her shoulders. "You'll freeze out here," he murmured. "I don't care," she whispered. For a long time, they sat in silence, the city stretching endlessly below. Finally, Damien spoke, his voice quieter than she'd ever heard. "When I was 10, my father lost everything," he said. "We went from a house full of noise and light to a basement with leaky pipes. My mother cried every night, and I swore I'd never Be powerless again. Elena turned her head, studying him. His expression was unreadable, but the faint tremor in his voice betrayed the truth. That's why you pay people, she said softly. Because money means control. He met her gaze. Because money means survival. Something shifted between them then, not romance, not yet, but an understanding. They were both children of survival, carrying scars invisible to the world. Sophia strikes, the peace didn't last. At a charity luncheon hosted by the Cole Foundation, Elena sat beside Damien, her hands folded in her lap, trying to disappear into the crowd. But she could feel the eyes on her, the whispers slipping like knives across the tablecloths. And then came Sophia Vance, gliding into the room in a blood-red dress. Her smile gleamed as cameras flashed. She leaned down, her lips brushing Damien's cheek, but her eyes, icy and mocking, locked on Elena. Well, well, Sophia purred, loud enough for others to hear. The waitress again. Tell me, Damien, do you pay her by the night or by the scandal? Laughter rippled through nearby guests. Elena's face burned, but she refused to drop her gaze. Careful, Sophia, Damien said coldly. Jealousy doesn't suit you. Sophia's smile sharpened. She leaned close to Elena, her voice a venomous whisper. Enjoy your borrowed time, darling. Girls like you never last in this world. Elena's pulse thundered. She wanted to shrink, to vanish, but instead, something inside her hardened. She lifted her chin and replied loud enough for others to hear. Funny. I was thinking the same about you. Gasps rippled around the table. Damien's lips twitched, just barely, but Elena caught the flicker of amusement in his eyes. Sophia's smile faltered for the first time before she swept away, her heels clicking furiously against the marble floor. For the rest of the luncheon, whispers filled the room, not mocking Elena this time, but marveling at her boldness. The betrayal. That evening, Elena returned to her apartment to find chaos. Lucas sat on the couch, pale and panicked, his hands shaking. I didn't mean to, he stammered. What happened? Elena demanded. He handed her his phone. On the screen were screenshots of private messages, his messages. Messages where he had bragged to his friends about the money, about Damien, even about Elena's late-night visits to Cole Tower. The screenshots had already been posted online. Her chest constricted. Lucas, how could you? I thought if I told them they'd stop calling me a loser. I didn't know it had spread like this. His voice cracked, tears welling in his eyes. I'm sorry, Lena. But sorry didn't erase the damage. Within hours, gossip sites had a new headline. Inside Elena Ruiz's secret dealings, brother confirms billionaire arrangement. The betrayal cut deeper than any headline. She felt like the floor beneath her was crumbling, leaving her nowhere to stand. Damien's stand. When Damien saw the headlines, his board demanded he distance himself from Elena. She's a liability, one director said. Cut her off before this destroys the company. But Damien stood. His voice was calm, but the steel beneath it was unmistakable. Elena stays, he said. The room fell silent. Any man can build an empire, he continued, but not every man can keep his integrity. I will not throw her to the wolves just to save face. For the first time, Elena realized he wasn't just protecting her, he was risking himself for her. The threat, but the wolves were not finished. Late that night, a package arrived at Cole Tower addressed to Elena. She opened it, cautiously, and froze. Inside was a single crystal heel, her shoe, the same one she had worn to the gala weeks ago, and tucked beside it, a note scrawled in elegant handwriting. You don't belong in his world. Her hands trembled as she read it. Fear crawled up her spine like ice. Someone had followed. Her. Someone wanted her gone. Damien's jaw tightened as he read the note. It's Sophia, he muttered. Elena shook her head, her voice trembling. Whoever it is, they won't stop. Damien stepped closer, his eyes burning with determination. Then neither will I. He trapped the note lay on the marble counter like a snake waiting to strike. Elena's fingers still trembled from holding it, the handwriting etched into her mind. You don't belong in his world. Her heart thundered. She had faced whispers, headlines, even betrayal from her brother. But this was different. This wasn't mockery. It was a threat. Damien stood across from her, his jaw clenched, the note crumpling in his fist. For once, his composure cracked, and fury burned in his eyes. They crossed a line, he said, his voice like gravel. No one threatens what's mine. Elena stiffened. What's mine? The words pressed against her chest, both protective and suffocating. I'm not yours, she whispered, though her voice wavered. His gaze softened slightly, but his tone remained firm. Then they shouldn't think they can touch you. Security. Shadows. The next day, Damien's assistant Victor appeared at Elena's apartment with two silent men in dark suits. They installed cameras, checked locks, and fitted her phone with tracking software. Elena hated it. The sense of being watched, of her privacy stripped even further, made her skin crawl. This isn't protection, she told Damien that night. It's another cage. It's survival, he countered. But when he looked at her, his eyes betrayed a truth. He wasn't protecting just her. He was protecting himself, too. The Gala Sophia struck again 2 weeks later. It was another charity. Gala, this one for children's hospitals. Damien insisted Elena attend with him, despite her protests. They want you silent, hidden, he told her. Standing beside me is the only way to fight back. So she wore a gown sent by his tailor, a flowing midnight blue dress that shimmered under the lights. As she stepped into the ballroom on Damien's arm, whispers rose instantly. But this time she didn't shrink. She held her head high, her grandmother's words echoing in her heart. Dignity. Always dignity. The night was polished and glittering until Sophia made her move. In the middle of the gala, as Damien spoke with donors, Sophia glided toward Elena, holding a champagne glass. Cameras turned, sensing drama. Well, if it isn't the infamous Elena Ruiz, Sophia purred, her smile razor-sharp. Tell me, how does it feel to cost a man more in one night than most countries spend in a year? Murmurs rippled around them. Elena's throat tightened, but she forced her voice steady. Better than it must feel to be so obsessed with a man who doesn't want you anymore. Gasps filled the room. For a split second, Sophia's mask cracked. Her eyes flashed with venom. But then she laughed, tossing back her champagne. Careful, darling. This world isn't kind to little girls playing princess. She turned sharply, the cameras capturing every angle. But this time, the whispers favored Elena. Bold, defiant, not a victim. Damien appeared at her side, his hand brushing hers under the tablecloth. He didn't smile, but the fire in his gaze said enough. Well done. The trap is set later that week. Victor discovered something. He handed Damien a folder, his expression grim. It's Sophia, Victor said. She's been paying off journalists, leaking photos, even bribing staff at the hospital. She's orchestrated the entire storm. Elena's stomach churned. Why? Just to humiliate me? Damien shook his head. No, to weaken me. My company is negotiating a billion-dollar merger. If I look reckless, unstable, she profits. She doesn't care who she destroys in the process. Elena's hands curled into fists. Then let's expose her. Damien studied her, surprise flickering in his eyes. You'd stand in front of the cameras again? Even after everything they've done to you? Her voice shook, but her resolve didn't. If I run, she wins, and I'm tired of running. The charity event. The Cole Foundation announced a new event, an emergency fundraiser for underfunded hospitals. This time, Damien and Elena would host it together. The media swarmed like bees, eager for spectacle. Elena stepped onto the stage. Beside Damien, her palms sweating. Flashbulbs blinded her, whispers buzzed like hornets. But when she looked out at the crowd, she remembered the children in the hospital wards, her grandmother's failing health, the patients she had once cared for. She spoke. Her voice trembled at first, but soon it grew steady, then strong. She told them about growing up with little, about watching her mother die in a hospital that couldn't afford enough staff, about why she chose nursing, not for money, not for prestige, but because healing was the only legacy she could give. The room hushed. Cameras clicked, but for once the focus wasn't scandal, it was sincerity. When she finished, applause rose like thunder. Damien stepped forward, his hand warm at her back, and announced a $100 million donation to children's hospitals in Basique. Elena's name. The headline the next day was different. Elena Ruiz, from scandal to savior. The envelope, but victory was short-lived. As the crowd dispersed, a waiter slipped an envelope into Damien's hand. He opened it, his jaw tightening. Inside were documents, contracts, financial records, and an old news clipping. Elena leaned closer and froze. The headline screamed at her, "Local hospital shuts down after coal industries land acquisition." And beneath it, her mother's photo. Her blood turned to ice. Her mother had worked at that hospital before she died. It was where Elena had spent her childhood afternoons waiting in the break room, where her mother had promised her a future that was now buried in the past. Her voice shook as she whispered, "You. It was you." Damien's face hardened. Guilt, flickering beneath the mask he wore. Elena. But she stepped back, her chest tightening, her vision blurring with tears. "All this time, you were the reason she lost her job, the reason everything fell apart." The envelope slipped from his hands, papers scattering across the marble floor. The trap had been sprung, and this time, Sophia hadn't aimed at Damien. She had aimed at Elena's heart. Breaking point back at her grandmother's apartment, Elena sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the eviction notice still pinned to the wall. She thought of the gala, the shoes, the headlines, the threats. She thought of Damien's eyes, those rare moments of softness, of vulnerability, and then of the papers proving he had destroyed her mother's world. When Mariah called, Elena's voice was hollow. "He gave me $50 million to save me," she said, "but he's the one who ruined me in the first place." Her friend's silence on the other end was answer enough. Sophia's offer. The next day, Elena received another message, this time not from Damien, but from Sophia. A car pulled up, sleek and black, and before Elena knew it, she was seated across from Sophia in a quiet restaurant corner. Sophia sipped her wine, her smile triumphant. "He's not the man you think he is. He's a vulture. He took your mother's job, her dignity, her life, and now he's taking yours. Walk away, Elena, walk away, and I'll make sure you and your family are set for life." Elena's hands trembled on the tablecloth. The offer glittered like a poisoned jewel. Safety, security, freedom from the chaos. But at what cost? Her grandmother's words echoed again. "Don't let fear decide your future." The choice. That night, Elena stood at the balcony of Cole Tower again, the city lights stretching endlessly below. Damien joined her, silent at first, his presence heavy. Finally, he spoke. "What Sophia showed you, it's true. I made that deal. I destroyed that hospital. I didn't know your mother worked there, but that doesn't excuse it." His voice cracked, just barely. "I've spent years trying to bury the man I was. But with you, I can't hide him anymore." Elena's heart ached, torn between anger and something softer, deeper. She wanted to hate him, She wanted to leave. But when she looked into his eyes, she didn't see the ruthless billionaire the world painted. She saw the boy who had lost everything and swore never to be powerless again. And she saw herself. The trap had been set, the lies revealed, but now the choice was hers. Truth and redemption. The night air on the balcony was cold, but Elena's chest burned with fire. Damien's confession still echoed in her ears. I destroyed that hospital, her mother's hospital, the one place she had called safe when the world outside had felt too heavy, gone, swallowed up by Damien Cole's empire. Her hands shook against the balcony railing. You don't understand, she whispered, her voice breaking. That hospital wasn't just a building. It was my mother's life. It was my childhood. Damien's face was shadowed, but the weight in his voice betrayed the storm inside him. I know, and if I could undo it, I would. But all I can do now is make it right. Elena turned away, her tears blurring the glittering skyline. And how do you make right the years of loss? The nights my grandmother cried because my mother couldn't find work, the way I had to grow up too fast because everything fell apart? Silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. Damien didn't reach for her, didn't try to touch her. For the first time, he looked powerless. Sophia's shadow. The next morning, the city woke to another storm. Sophia Vance had leaked the documents to the press. Every headline screamed the scandal. Cole empire linked to hospital shutdown. Lives destroyed. Damien Cole, billionaire or butcher? The timing was brutal. Damien's billion-dollar what-a merger was on the line, and Elena's name was woven into every article, every broadcast. At her grandmother's apartment, Elena watched the news in silence. Lucas shifted uneasily beside her, guilt etched on his young face. Lena, he began. She shook her head, tears threatening again. Not now. But when her grandmother's frail hand touched hers, Elena broke. I don't know what to do. Abuela, if I stay with him, the world will call me blind. If I leave, I'll always wonder if I walked away from the truth. Her grandmother's tired eyes softened. The world will always talk, Mija. But you must decide who you are. Do you want to be ruled by fear, or do you want to stand with dignity? The boardroom showdown Damien called a press conference that afternoon. Elena didn't plan to go, but something in her grandmother's words pushed her there. The boardroom buzzed with cameras, journalists scribbling furiously, lights glaring hot against the polished wood table. Damien stood at the head, tall and unyielding, but there was no arrogance in his stance, only resolve. Yes, he said into the microphones. Years ago, I made a deal that shut down a hospital. I thought of profits, not people. That was my failure. Gasps filled the room. His board members shifted uncomfortably, expecting him to dodge, to deny. But Damien pressed on. I can't change what I did, but I can own it. And I will dedicate not just money, but my company's resources to rebuilding. Not just one hospital, 10, across the country, staffed, funded, and supported indefinitely. And the first will bear the name of Elena Ruiz's mother. Flashbulbs exploded. Reporters shouted questions. The board members gawked. And then, from the back of the room, a voice rang out, lies. All eyes turned. Sophia Vance stepped forward, her crimson suit blazing under the lights. She held up a folder of documents. This man thinks he can buy redemption, but don't be fooled. This is just another performance. He doesn't care about people. He never has. The crowd erupted in chaos. Elena's heart pounded. She knew this was the moment. The trap was complete, unless someone shattered it. She stood. Elena's voice. The room stilled as she walked forward, her steps steady despite the storm in her chest. Every camera turned to her. Every journalist leaned in. Elena, Damien began, but she raised her hand to silence him. Her voice rang clear. You all want a story. The girl who took $50 million, The billionaire who destroys lives, the ex-lover seeking revenge. But none of you are asking the right questions. Whispers rose, but Elena pressed on, her words sharp and steady. Yes, Damien made a mistake, a terrible one that hurt families like mine. But I have also seen the man he is now, the man who listens, who changes, who is willing to be hated if it means building something better. And I ask you, who among you has never made a mistake? Who among you has never chosen pride over compassion? The high room was silent. Cameras clicked, but no one interrupted. She turned to Sophia, her gaze burning. And you call me a girl who doesn't belong. Maybe you're right, I don't belong in your world of greed and games, but I do belong in this fight. Because dignity isn't for sale, no matter how much money you throw. Sophia's smile faltered. Elena's voice softened as she turned back to the crowd. I'm not here to defend Damien's past. I'm here to remind you that people can change. And if we spend all our lives tearing down those who try, then nothing will ever get better. Applause began in the back. It spread, rippling through the room until even some of the journalists were clapping. Sophia's face burned with rage. She slammed the folder shut and stormed out, her heels clicking like gunshots. Redemption. The days that followed were a whirlwind. The headlines shifted. Elena Ruiz speaks out, dignity over dollars. Damien Cole pledges 500 mailers to hospital network. Sophia Vance exposed for media manipulation. Victor's investigations revealed Sophia's bribes and smear campaigns. Within weeks, her empire crumbled. Investors pulled out, her company's stock plummeted, and her name became synonymous with scandal. Meanwhile, Damien's bold confession and Elena's speech turned the tide. The merger went through, stronger than before, not because of money, but because investors saw something rare in business: integrity. And Elena? She became more than a headline. Universities invited her to speak. Patients at hospitals sent her letters. Young women wrote to say she gave them courage. She was no longer the waitress who cost $50 million. She was Elena Ruiz, her own name, her own voice. The choice one evening, weeks later, Damien found her sitting on the rooftop garden of Cole Tower. The city spread out below, glowing like a sea of stars. He stood beside her, his hands in his pockets. For once, he looked uncertain. I didn't expect you to stand up for me, he admitted quietly. Elena smiled faintly. I didn't do it for you. His brows lifted. I did it for me, she said softly. Because I was tired of being defined by your offer, by Sophia's poison, by the world's gossip. I needed them to see me, not the scandal. Me. Damien's gaze softened. He sat beside her, the silence between them comfortable now. I told you before, he murmured. 50 million bought me nothing. But your innocence, your dignity, gave me everything. Her chest ached, but it wasn't the ache of pain. It was the ache of something new, something fragile and real. She turned her face toward him, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. Then promise me one thing. Anything. Don't ever use money as an excuse for love. His lips curved into the faintest smile. Deal. Months later, the first new hospital opened. Its name gleamed in silver letters above the doors. The Isabel Ruiz Memorial Hospital. Elena stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony, her grandmother's frail hand clutching hers, tears streaming down both their faces. Lucas stood behind them, guilt long replaced by pride. Damien stood on the stage, watching her with an expression no camera could capture, an expression reserved only for her. The world still whispered, still speculated, still craved scandal. But Elena no longer cared. She had found her voice, her strength, her dignity, and in a world where everything had a price, she had proven one truth. Some things can never be bought.